is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. And we are starting off with the story from The Guardian. In fact, 3 stories today from The Guardian. Probably actually one of the only actual news sites that I read and don't hate. I always agree with it, but I at least read it and I don't hate it because it seems it's about as neutral as we get these days. Anyways, this one is about Afghanistan, and it is pretty awful, so I'm just going to say that from the outset. But nobody's talking about Afghanistan really at all. People seem to have forgotten, which is disturbing to say the least. And America wants to wash their hands of it. The UK wants to wash their hands of it. NATO don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about what's going on there, but we are going to talk about what's going on there because it needs to be discussed. Crushing poverty is forcing starving, displaced people to make desperate choices. The temperature is dropping to below zero in western Afghanistan, and Delram Rahmati is struggling to find food for her 8 children, She's leaving the family home in the country's Baghdad province 4 years ago. The Rahmatis have been living in a mud hut with a plastic roof in one of the Herat city slums. A drought made their village unlivable. So that's a drought. They have no water. And the land unworkable, so they can't grow food and crops. Like an estimated 3.5 million Afghans who have been forced to leave their homes, the Rahmatis now live in a neighbourhood for internally displaced people. There are no jobs, but the 50-year-old has hospital fees to pay for 2 of her sons, one of whom is paralysed and the other who has a mental illness, as well as medicine for her husband. She says that she was forced to sell 2 of her daughters, an 8 and 6-year-old. She says, Rahmati says she sold her daughters a few months ago for 100,000 Afghani each, which is roughly £700. The families she didn't know. Her daughters will stay with her until they reach puberty and then will be handed over to the strangers. Obviously, that's horrible. I just want you guys to think about that for a second. I really want you to think about this because this is what America isn't talking about, right? What the UK isn't talking about. It's what NATO isn't talking about. They want to talk about this because it makes them look terrible, because they are terrible for what they've done to Afghanistan. This woman has had to sell her daughters to strangers, and she knows in a few years, when they're grown up, she has to give them away. Just think how messed up that is. It is not uncommon in Afghanistan to arrange the sale of a daughter into a future marriage, but raise her at home until it is time for her to leave. However, as the country's economic crisis deepens, families are reporting that they are handing children over at an increasingly young age because they cannot afford to feed them. Yet selling a daughter's future was not the only agonizing decision Rahmati was forced to make. Because of debt and hunger, I was forced to sell my kidney, she tells Rushkshan media from outside a home in Herat slum. Afghanistan is on the brink of a humanitarian crisis and economic collapse, according to the UN. The agency's ambassador to Afghanistan has said it is experiencing the worst humanitarian crisis of its contemporary history. Drought, COVID-19, and the economic sanctions imposed after Taliban seized power in August 2021 had a catastrophic consequence on the economy. Dramatic rise in inflation have resulted in soaring food prices. So what is that? People can't drink. Food isn't being produced. Food costs so much more. They've got a pandemic going on. And then on top of that, they have the economic sanctions, which means they're in the situation for the long term, for a very, very long time. The kidney trade has been growing in Afghanistan for some time, but since the Taliban took power, the price and conditions under which the illegal trade has taken place has changed. The price of a kidney, which once ranged from $3,500 to $4,000, $2,600 to £3,000, has dropped to less than $1,500, £1,100. But the number of volunteers keeps rising, and obviously this is through people's desperation. Rahmati sold a right kidney for 150,000 Afghani, £1,000. But her recovery from the operation has not been good, and now, like her husband, she's also sick, with no money left to visit a doctor. So she's tried, right? She's sold her daughters, 2 of them. She sold her own kidney to try and get money to survive, and that went wrong, and she's still left with absolutely nothing. More than half of the country's estimated 40 million population face extreme levels of hunger, and nearly 9 million of them are at risk of famine. according to the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR. For a growing number of Afghans, selling a kidney is the only way to get money to eat. It's been months since we last ate rice. We hardly find bread and tea 3 nights a week. We can't afford to eat dinner, says Salahuddin Taheri, who lives in the same slum as the Ramati family. Taheri, a 27-year-old father of four, who scrapes together enough money for 5 loaves of bread each day by collecting and selling recycled rubbish. He's looking for a buyer for his kidney. I've been asking private hospitals in Hereford for many days if they need any kidney. I even told them if they need it urgently, I can sell it below the market price, but I haven't heard back. Terry says, I need to feed my children. I have no other choice. This is horrible. This is horrible. It honestly is. And the blame can only be put upon the United States, the United Kingdom, and NATO. They let this happen. This is a direct consequence of their actions in August, or should I say, their inactions for not even 3 months, their inactions for 3 years before they knew what was going to happen in not preparing Afghanistan and allowing this to take place knowingly they knew this would happen. And it's disgraceful. And these people are suffering millions and they're going to keep suffering. In the past 5 years, about 250 official kidney transplants have taken place in the hospitals in Herat province, with very limited numbers being a family member donating their organs, says Asif Kabir, a public health official in the province. The cost of a kidney transplant is 400,000 Afghani, plus the price of a kidney, according to Kabir. But the true number of kidney operations may be far higher. A doctor working in one of the hospitals where most of the transplants take place, he spoke on the condition anonymity, says the number of people who want to sell the kidney is increasing in Herat, and most of them live in displaced camps in Herat slums. Customers also go to displaced camps to find a cheap kidney. Also, going further into this, there's more in the sections, but another thing that's going on is that kidneys being sold outside of Afghanistan. So, for example, a kidney is purchased for 300,000 Afghani, £2,100 inside Afghanistan. It is then sold for more than £7,500 to 11,000 outside the country, says Sadat. We found evidence that some are encouraged to sell their kidneys, taken outside the borders, and the kidneys sold for 200 to 400,000 Afghani, says Sadat. Seems that the doctors are involved in the illegal trade, but unfortunately our investigation was stopped due to a worsening the security situation. So 2 months have passed since Ramati's kidney operation, the money has already gone to pay off the medical debt. Her recovery from the operation continues to go badly. I am so sick, I couldn't even walk because the wound has been infected. It is very painful, she says, adding that the recipient of a kidney only pays for the operation fee, 2 nights in hospital, and the first medical bill. On the day of the transplant, Ramati was sick and the doctors refused to operate. I couldn't breathe properly, so the doctors took me down from the hospital bed. But I returned. I told them I am happy with my own death, but I can't tolerate seeing my children hungry and ill, she says. Obviously, that's a really, really heartfelt story and horrible. And that's the worsening situation in Afghanistan. It's been something that's been known about for some time now, that things were heading this way, that things were getting more and more desperate. But I wanted to cover this one again because I feel like just because we know it's heading this way, we shouldn't just ignore it, right? We shouldn't ignore that things are worse now than ever and that millions of people are suffering in famine, can't get water, can't get food. And what's more shocking is that this is the direct consequence of what we did to the country in August. Well, what we did to the country as a whole. And now we don't even offer aid to these people. They're just left alone to suffer. But let's move on to the next story. And if you are a victim of abuse, then this next story is not one to be taken lightly. It is quite horrible. But let's move into it. This one is also from The Guardian. Met Police apologises to woman for sexist derogatory language in strip search. The Metropolitan Police have apologised and pays compensation to an academic for sexist derogatory and unacceptable language used by officers about her when she was strip searched. This is really, really awful. So please bear that in mind. What's that smell? Oh, it's a knickers. Officers at a northeast London police station said to each other after Dr. Konstantia Duff was held down on the floor and her clothes cut off. Is she rank? Another said. The Met Police apologised to Duff, an assistant professional of philosophy at the University of Nottingham, after CCTV video capturing the officers' conversations was disclosed to her as part of a civil action against the force. Inspector Andy O'Donnell of the Met Directorate of Professional Standards told her, I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely and unreservedly apologise for the sexist, derogatory and acceptable language used about you and for any upset and distress this may have caused. And I just want to say this now. This apology means nothing. This whole situation is absolutely vile. It actually makes me sick to my stomach. I hope that the settlement of this claim and this recognition of the impact of what happened that day will enable you to put this incident behind you. It's so disgusting. The worst part is he thinks that a statement like that will allow someone to put an incident like this behind them. And that's just not true. This isn't something you forget. This is something that this woman's going to live with for the rest of her life. For the absolute rest of her life. It's disgraceful. These are police officers. We'll get into more of the details so you guys can understand just how bad this is. Duff said in every detail, the footage backed up what I had said in my statements for years and years. Officers had claimed that they had acted with professionalism, strip searching her for their own safety because she would not give them her name. There was such a barrage of misinformation that they put out that I actually, even though I was there and knew it was false, had almost started to doubt myself, Duff said. It was such an effective gaslighting. We were just concerned for your mental health. That's why we had to, for your own good, forcibly strip you naked and mash you up. It was so obviously not what they were doing at the time. They were doing it as a punishment. They were doing it as intimidation. They wanted to soften me up and get my details. And this is what sparked this off. This is why she was in that police station. Duff was arrested on the 5th of May 2013 on suspicion of obstructing and assaulting police after trying to hand a legal advice card to a 15-year-old caught in a stop and search sweep in Hackney. So she didn't obstruct them. She didn't assault them. She simply was giving a vulnerable teenager who doesn't know anything, a legal advice card so they can know their right, so they can get legal representation, so they don't say something stupid, so they don't say something that can be used against them and potentially have their lives ruined. And to make it worse, these allegations she was later cleared of in court. So what they said about her obstructing and assaulting police, that wasn't true. She never did that. The allegations they made were cleared in court. But when she was arrested, she was taken to Stoke Newington police station where Sergeant Curtis Howard, in charge of the custody area, ordered the search when she refused to cooperate with officers. In 2018, Howard appeared before a disciplinary panel, which cleared him of gross misconduct, which is disgraceful in itself, because you'll hear more in a moment, and you will think to yourself, how the hell could they have cleared him of this? How could in any way what he did be right? He argued the search was necessary to assess any risk Duff might pose to herself, and its chair concluded his actions were those of a responsible officer. However, in the CCTV footage now obtained by Duff of the police station custody area on the day she was searched, it shows Howard telling officers to show her resistance is futile and to search her by any means necessary. Treat her like a terrorist, he says. I don't care. And people don't listen when men, women, and minorities say that they are terrified of the police. People don't listen. They blow it off. They go, oh, you're just saying that. There's no reason to be scared of the police. Oh, it's just politics. No, these are terrified people who've had horrible things done to them. These are women who know other women that have been through this, and they're scared that it's going to happen to them. These are men that know men that have been through this and scared it's going to happen to them. These are people in minority groups who've seen it happen to people like them, and they're terrified. And this is the police. These are meant to protect you. And instead, they are the abusers. So in a cell, three female officers bound Duff by her hands and feet, pinned her to the floor, and cut her claws off with scissors. Duff described the ordeal, which left her with a number of visible injuries, like sexual assault. The CCTV footage then shows the officers who searched Duff return to reception. A male officer asked them, "Didn't find anything untoward on her, ladies?" "A lot of hair," one of the female officers replies. The others laugh. After a minute later, as two male officers go through Duff's possessions, one asks in mock alarm, Sorry, what's that smell?" "Oh, it's a knickers, yeah," his colleague replies. A female officer then returns again from handling Duff. "I feel disgusting. I'm going to need a shower," she says. "You need the fumigation," the male officer tells her. Another female officer asks her, "Is she rank?" "No, she's not actually," she says. "She is. Her clothes stink." Another male officer says, "Is it?" "Her body isn't," she replies. The Met did not say whether any officers faced disciplinary action, because why would they? But said allegations of misconduct relating to the comments being referred to its Professional Standards Directorate, and the investigation remains ongoing. And Duff said the individual officers' actions were not the issue. She said the exchanges shown in CCTV exposed the culture's sexualized mockery, the dehumanizing attitude shown during her strip search. Officers' taunts of her in the cell, out of view of CCTV, were worse than those captured on camera, she said. The crucial issue is that racism, misogyny, sexual violence are normalized in policing, said Duff, who has written widely on the politics of police abolition. And the way in which they treated me, the fact that it's normal, is shown by the way that at every level of the system it was rubber stamped for 8 years. There's a stark truth there, and a stark reality. And honestly, the Met Police needs dealing with. It's not just one case, though. It's not just Duff's case. There's 750 allegations, 88% of which involve male officers, that involve sexual harassment and accusations of sexual assault. 750, and only 83 sackings. It's absurd. Moving on to another story. Surgeon faces legal action for trying to sell a Bataclan victim X-ray as NFT. If you ever wanted to know what it was going to be about the NFT culture, well, here it is. We've really sunk to the bottom of the law now. A senior French surgeon faces legal action and a possible disciplinary charge after attempting to sell an X-ray of a concert goer who was shot during the 2015 attack on the Bataclan Music Hall in Paris. Emmanuel Masmagine, an orthopedic surgeon who practices in the Georges Pompidou Public Hospital in southwest Paris, was first reported by the Mediapart website on Saturday to be selling an image of an X-ray as a digital artwork without the patient's consent. Yes, we now have doctors trying to sell patients' X-rays as NFTs so they can make bank. And guess where he was trying to sell this? He was selling this for £2,776 on the website OpenSea. Yeah, this one's tied to OpenSea as well. You know that platform that NFT enthusiasts say is so great and is legitimate and on the up and up. The head of Paris' public hospitals, Martin Hurst, wrote on Twitter on Saturday confirming that a criminal and professional complaint would be lodged against the surgeon for his disgraceful and scandalous decision. This act is contrary to sound professional practice, puts the medical secrecy in danger, and goes against the values of APHP, Paris hospitals, and public service. Hirsch wrote in a message sent staff, which he shared on Twitter. Asked for comment by Mediapart, Masmagine acknowledged that the sale was an error and said he regretted not having sought permission from the patient. Like that would have made it better. What the hell? Like the patient's permission would have made it better. Oh, it wasn't a mistake to try and sell the NFT. It was a mistake that I didn't ask the patient before I did it. And it gets worse. The patient is not identified, but is described as a young woman whose boyfriend was killed in the attack. So, this guy wanted to sell her X-ray, and then he says, "Oh, well, that was a mistake. I should have asked her first." So he wanted to ask the victim of a terrorist attack, who lost a boyfriend in the attack, "Hey, would you mind if I just sold your X-ray as an NFT?" According to Masmagine's description on OpenSea, the patient had an open fracture of the left forearm, with a remaining bullet of Kalashnikov in soft tissues. The Victims Association, Life for Paris, said in a statement that it stood alongside the victim of the attack, who is today the victim of stupidity by a doctor who has evidently forgotten his ethical code. The Second Association for Fraternity and Truth denounced the odious behaviour on Twitter, but said it was isolated and not representative of the health workers of APHP, in which we have complete confidence. And this is frankly disturbing. It's disturbing that this would be allowed on OpenSea, but there again, it's an unregulated platform, right? So, not really a lot you can say about that. But it's also disturbing that this is happening with doctors now, where mine, yours, and anyone's records could be sold for their personal gain. And I think honestly now, and I hope France makes a stand for this, serious legislation came in to regulate these industries because they're destroying people's lives. I can't imagine what this person's gone through and what they're feeling with this. Bringing back all those tragic memories. I can't imagine how unbearably painful this has been for her. It continues to be. But it's not just her, it's victims of art theft as well. People who are having their logos ripped off or their likenesses stolen, and it's not right. And you have these NFT people defending this, saying that, oh, it's just digital art, oh, it's the future, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, oh, it's only isolated incidents. They're trying to legitimize an industry that is unregulated and is frankly abusive, that doesn't care about ownership at all. And even when they're talking about it, they go, oh, well, we do own it because we have these receipts and smart contracts. But do you? Just because an online document says something doesn't mean it's true. Just because someone puts an NFT up and says it's their original work and sells it to you and says you own it doesn't mean it's true. If you look at the Castlevania NFT sales, one of the stipulations is that anyone that bought the Castlevania NFTs, if they resell them, then they have to pay 10% back to the original creators. So if you own it, why would you have to pay the original people who made it money back? Because obviously you don't own it. So these agreements are very, very, very dodgy. The whole situation is dodgy with NFTs. People are getting into it with misinformed information and thinking that because someone got an up and up deal, a legitimate deal, that all of them are legitimate when it isn't. Not all things are the same, right? And more needs to be done to tackle this industry. More needs to be done to tackle NFTs. This can't be allowed to continue. Especially not when it's starting to come to selling people's medical records and stuff and things that have happened to them. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think of everything that we've discussed in this video. Afghanistan, which was obviously horrible. The Met Police, which was even worse. Actually, no. Both those topics were equally horrible and disturbing in their own incredibly awful ways. And the final topic is exactly much better. It's just an example of, frankly, the way the world is going. But let me know what you guys think down below of all the topics. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.